This morning, a cardboard box showed up on my doorstep. No return address. No name. Just one word scribbled in black marker on the top. Unfinished. I stood there in my slippers, coffee in hand, robe tied loose, staring at it like it might hiss or bleed. I hadn't ordered anything. My birthday isn't for another 4 months. And the last person who sent me a surprise died in 2019. I brought it inside, cut the tape, peeled it open. Inside was a single manila folder. On top of it, a white envelope. My name, Lyle, written in a handwriting I hadn't seen in 15 years, but would recognize even if I went blind. Vanessa. I didn't open the envelope right away. I just sat there on the kitchen stool with it in my hand, staring at the folder. It was heavier than it looked. When I opened it, I felt cold all over. Inside were photocopies of our old divorce papers. But these weren't the ones from court. These were annotated, underlined, highlighted, comments scribbled in the margins, like she had studied them, rewritten her own history with a red pen. And stapled to the final page was something that made my heart stop. A second signature. Mine was already there, from 15 years ago. But now hers again. Same spot. Same slant. She had re-signed the divorce papers. Dated it last week. There was a post-it stuck to the back of the folder. It said, "I thought I was free back then. Now I know what freedom costs." That was it. No hi. No remember me. No sorry for the affair that ruined your life and made me a running joke in your family for a decade. Just that. And I knew, immediately, this wasn't guilt. This wasn't closure. This was a warning. Because if she was reaching out now, something was coming. Something bigger than her cheating. Bigger than Harlan, the married man she left me for. Bigger than all the years I spent rebuilding myself from her wreckage. I put the envelope in the freezer. I don't know why. It just felt safer there. And tonight, as I sit here writing this, I can hear tires slowing outside my house. Not stopping, just slowing. Something tells me she's not done with me yet. And the worst part? A piece of me isn't done with her either. I stared at that second signature for so long, I began to doubt the first. You ever look at your own name until it starts to look like someone else's? That's what happened. I couldn't even remember what I looked like back when I signed it the first time. Maybe I wasn't a person back then. Maybe I was just a bruise with a job and a smile painted over it. But it wasn't just the signature that was new. There was something else in the box, hidden under the folder. A flash drive, duct taped to the bottom like some kind of secret spy drop. I peeled it off carefully and stared at it, half expecting it to self-destruct Mission Impossible style. My hands were trembling, but I plugged it into my laptop anyway. Because let's be honest, if your ex-wife who vanished off the face of the earth after humiliating you in front of 2 entire families suddenly sends you a mysterious package with legal documents and a USB stick, you're gonna look. The drive was encrypted, password protected. One single file named Confession. Password hint, where we ended. I wish that had stumped me, but it didn't. I typed it immediately, Harborview. The name of the seedy motel where she stayed the night after leaving me. I only knew that because the front desk manager felt bad for me and told me, after I came there looking for her like a complete fool. Her car was still in the lot. The blinds were open. I saw her silhouette. And another man's. I never knocked. The file opened after a second. No hesitation. It was a voice recording. 1 minute, 37 seconds long. Just her voice. Shaky. Older. But still undeniably her. She said my name, slowly, like it hurt her throat. Lyle, I know what I did can't be undone. I've told myself for years that I didn't owe you anything. That you were just a chapter 1 closed. But the truth is, the chapter didn't end. I just threw the book into a fire and called that healing. She paused. I could hear her breathing. And crying. Or maybe that was me. Harlan's gone. And not just gone like out of my life. He's gone. What he left behind, it's not something I can carry on my own. You always told me the truth would find its way to the surface, even if we buried it deep enough to walk over. Well, Lyle, it's surfacing, and I think you deserve to know everything. That was it. The recording clicked off like a trapdoor slamming shut. No explanations. No details. Just the kind of apology that sounds more like an obituary than a confession. I sat there in the glow of my screen for a long time, surrounded by silence, until I realized something chilling. The file had modified itself. Somehow, after playing, the file name changed. It now read, Scene. No clue how. I'm not tech illiterate. That doesn't happen by accident. I yanked the drive out, slammed the laptop shut, Then I looked out the window, and in the far corner of the street, beneath the busted lamppost that never quite flickers the same way twice, was a car. It wasn't there earlier. It wasn't running, but someone was inside it, watching. I didn't move at first, just stared through the blinds, breath caught halfway between my throat and lungs. The street outside my house is usually dead quiet after 9 p.m., even more so on a Tuesday. But the car wasn't one I recognized. A black Lincoln Continental, mid-2000s model, with no plates. At least none I could see from the angle. It didn't move, didn't idle, just sat there like it belonged to the darkness itself. My first instinct was to turn off the lights. My second was to convince myself I was being paranoid. Maybe someone was waiting for a rideshare. Maybe it was a neighbor's guest. Maybe it had nothing to do with the flash drive, or the box, or her. But the thing about paranoia is that it doesn't feel irrational when it's fed by history. I closed the blinds, heart hammering, and paced the kitchen for what felt like hours. Every creak of the floorboard, every pop of the radiator sounded like a footstep I wasn't taking. I was sweating. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I hadn't felt like this since the night I found out about her in Harlan. The same dizziness. That low-grade nausea that crawls up your throat like acid made from betrayal. I finally cracked and called a friend of mine, Tucker, the only person who stuck around after the divorce. He used to work private security, got into real estate later. He's one of those people who keeps a shotgun behind every door and a camera on every tree. I asked if he could come by and take a look. He said give him 30 minutes. I sat in the living room, lights off, watching the shadow of the car through the slits in the blinds. Still there. Still no movement. I didn't blink for minutes at a time. I started to wonder if maybe the figure I thought I saw wasn't real. Maybe no one was even inside. Maybe it was just my mind, playing the long game, punishing me for all the times I let her get away with little lies that eventually became big ones. Tucker pulled up fast, headlights off, engine cut a block early. Tactical. He crept up to the side of the car with a flashlight in one hand and something bulkier under his coat. When he tapped on the driver's window, I nearly jumped through the ceiling. But here's the thing. No one responded. He opened the door. It was unlocked. Empty. No driver. No signs of life. No trash in the console. No glove box contents. Nothing. But in the passenger seat was another folder. He brought it to my doorstep, eyebrows raised. "You got enemies I don't know about, Lyle?" he asked, half joking. I didn't laugh. I took the folder with trembling hands and told him I'd call him later. Inside was a single photo of me, taken from outside my house. Through my window. It was time-stamped. Yesterday. There was no note. No explanation. Just the photo, printed on thick, glossy paper like it came from a surveillance lab or a very expensive home printer. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. Private number. No ID. You shouldn't have listened to it. My blood froze. I hadn't told anyone I opened the file. Not even Tucker. Not online. Not over email. No cloud backups. I checked. Whoever sent that message was watching me in real time. And that's when I realized this wasn't about an affair anymore. This wasn't about closure or apologies or guilt. This was something else entirely. Something that had only just begun. I didn't sleep that night. After the text, I turned off my phone and shoved it under the sink, like that would somehow disconnect me from whoever, or whatever, was watching. I pulled the curtains shut, double-locked the doors, and sat in the hallway with a baseball bat across my knees like I was in some kind of home invasion movie. Every sound outside made my nerves snap tighter. I hadn't felt this hunted since she left. But even that didn't compare to this. That was heartbreak. This was war. When the sun finally pushed through the cracks in the curtain the next morning, I was already dressed and gripping my car keys like they were hand grenades. I knew I couldn't stay home. Not when someone had gotten into my street undetected. Not when there was a photo of me taken through my own window. I needed air. Distance. Somewhere that didn't reek of paranoia and cold sweat. So I did something I swore I never would. I drove to Harborview. The motel. The place where she spent her first night after leaving me. I don't know what I was expecting. Closure? A sign? Maybe just the feeling of confronting the exact coordinates where my life fell off a cliff. When I got there, the building was half boarded up. Paint peeling off the siding. The sign flickering with just the H and V working. Still, the lobby was open, manned by a kid who looked like he hadn't seen sunlight in a year. I asked if room 6, her room, was still in service. He looked at me like I was asking for a tombstone. It's sealed, he said. No one rents that one. Why? Maintenance issues. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. I slipped him a 50 and told him I'd only be 5 minutes. He hesitated, then handed me a ring of keys without a word. The door to room 6 groaned like it hadn't been opened in years. Dust exploded into the air like spores from a dead memory. The curtains were drawn. The bed was stripped bare. But there was something about the room that felt wrong. Off. Like walking into a photograph taken 1 second before something terrible happened. And then I saw it. In the far corner, behind the mini fridge that was half rusted and leaning sideways. A door. A door I knew for a fact hadn't existed in the original layout. The room was too small. There was no way another door could have fit. But there it was. Wood faded gray. Handle tarnished. No lock. I opened it. Behind it wasn't a bathroom. It was another room. Small. Dimly lit by a single flickering bulb in the ceiling. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings. Notes. String. A corkboard full of printed photographs. It looked like something out of a crime thriller, like someone had been living in there, watching, connecting dots that didn't want to be connected. I stepped closer, heart punching my ribs. In the center of the board, pinned dead in the middle with a knife stabbed through the paper, was a photograph of me. Again, this one was older, maybe a decade old, taken at a gas station just outside Salem, Oregon, a place I hadn't been to since 2015. But I recognized it instantly because I remembered the exact moment. I had dropped my coffee and was picking it up, cursing under my breath. That wasn't a public photo. That wasn't online. Someone had been tracking me for years. Then I looked to the right side of the board and saw a photo of Vanessa. Not from 15 years ago, but recent. She looked thinner, harsher, her hair cut short. She was exiting what looked like a hospital or clinic. There was a man standing behind her. He wasn't Harlan. And the worst part? Pinned beneath her photo was a sticky note. 3 words, written in red ink. Not the target. I stumbled back. What did that mean? Who was the target? Me? Harlan? Someone else? Suddenly I heard something. Footsteps, down the hall. Slow, deliberate, coming toward room 6. No voices. Just the shuffle of someone who already knew I was in there. I grabbed the photo of Vanessa and ran through the door, slamming it shut behind me. I bolted out the front of the motel, tossed the keys into a bush, and didn't look back once. I don't know what that room was. I don't know who built it. But I know now, with sickening certainty, that I've been in someone's story for a long, long time. And I was never the author. I drove for almost 2 hours with no idea where I was going. Somewhere between the back roads of Newburgh and the outskirts of Corvallis, I realized I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had turned white. The photo of Vanessa was on the passenger seat beside me, fluttering slightly every time I hit a bump in the road. I kept glancing at it, not because I needed to see her face again, but because I couldn't stop staring at the note beneath it, not the target. If she wasn't the target, then who was? And more importantly, why the hell had she sent me that package in the first place? Was she warning me, luring me, begging for help, or just dragging me into something she couldn't outrun? By the time I pulled into an old diner off a forgotten stretch of highway, my legs were numb and my mind felt like a hard drive overheating. The place was nearly empty. Just one old man asleep in a booth and a waitress who looked like she'd seen every kind of secret in the world and filed them alphabetically in her smile. I sat in the corner, ordered a black coffee, and pulled out my laptop, the one I swore I wouldn't touch again after that voice file. But I had to know more. About Vanessa. About Harlan. About anything that could explain why someone had built a shrine to my life in a sealed motel room. I searched Harlan Dow first. The man she left me for. Married, father of 2. Architect. Scumbag. The headlines were still online. Executive scandal rocks firm. Affair with intern leads to collapse of multi-million-dollar deal. But then I noticed something strange. Most of the articles had been scrubbed. Links led to 404 pages. Images were gone. And buried deep in the archives of a local news site from 3 years ago, I found it. Harlan Dow, presumed dead. The article was short. Vague. Car accident on logging road. Vehicle found. Body never recovered. Foul play suspected but not confirmed. No follow-up stories. No statements from family. It was like the world had quietly decided to forget him. But something inside me wouldn't. Because there was one more detail that made the hairs on my neck rise. The date listed in the article. The last known sighting of Harlan Dow was exactly 1 week before Vanessa disappeared from all social media, phone records, and employment databases. I suddenly felt watched. Not in a vague, eerie way, but directly, tangibly. I turned my head slowly toward the window. Parked across the street was the same black Lincoln Continental. Same rust around the front wheel. Same missing plates. No lights on. No movement. But I could feel the presence inside. I closed the laptop and tossed a 20 on the table. Walked outside like I was just heading for the bathroom. Then doubled around the back of the diner and crossed behind the kitchen until I came up on the car from behind. I approached slowly. No one inside. But the passenger door was slightly ajar. I opened it. And there, taped to the dashboard, was a single Polaroid photo. An old one. Curled edges. Bad exposure. It was of Vanessa and me, standing in front of our old apartment. But someone had drawn a big red X over my face. Not hers. Mine. And written on the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, were 6 words. She was supposed to kill you. I stumbled back, heart pounding so loud it hurt. Was that what all this was? Some long con gone wrong? Had I survived something 15 years ago that I never even knew was meant to end me? Back then, when she left me for Harlan, was that even real? Or was it the cover story? I stood there trembling in the middle of the road, gripping that photograph like it held the answers to my entire life. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket, a number I hadn't seen in years. It was her. Vanessa. No voicemail this time. Just a text. Lyle, if you're reading this, then I'm out of time. I didn't want to hurt you back then, but they were never after me. They just needed me close enough to you. That's why I left. That's why I never came back. You were never the plan. I read it 3 times before the message self-deleted. Gone. Not archived. Not backed up. Gone. And that's when I realized the truth, something that had been circling around me like a buzzard for days. She didn't leave me to betray me. She left me to fail. And somehow, against all odds, I survived anyway. By the time I got back to my house, it was nearly midnight. I parked 2 blocks away and walked through the alley behind my garage, ducking between fences like I was escaping a war zone instead of just avoiding a parked car. I didn't see the Lincoln again, but that didn't mean anything anymore. Whoever was behind this, behind her, behind Harlan, behind the motel room, and the folder and the self-deleting messages, they weren't just watching. They were choreographing. I didn't turn on the lights. I slid through my front door and locked it behind me in silence. My house felt colder, smaller, like the walls had been listening to everything and were shrinking now that they knew what I knew. I couldn't sleep, but I also couldn't sit still. Something about that last message from Vanessa wouldn't leave my mind. They just needed me close enough to you. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't protective. It was clinical, like she had been placed near me for a purpose, like I had been selected. I walked into the guest bedroom, the one I never used anymore. It had been her art room once. She used to paint. Abstract stuff. Messy, chaotic lines of color that looked like nothing until you blinked, and then suddenly it was a face or a scream or a field on fire. I hadn't touched anything in there since she left. The room still smelled faintly like turpentine and lemon soap. Her old easel was folded in the corner, canvas still covered with a half-finished piece, a black figure standing in the middle of a red sea. I always thought it was just an emotional piece. Now I wondered if it was a map. But something else caught my eye. A warped floorboard near the wall. It hadn't been like that before. I would have noticed. I'm obsessive about details, about anything I can control, because for years I was the only one trying to hold things together. I stepped on it. It creaked, but not like the others. It was hollow. I pried it open with the flat end of a screwdriver. There was a small, dusty metal box underneath. Like a jewelry box. I pulled it out and set it on the table, hands already starting to sweat. The latch wasn't locked, just rusted shut. It popped with one twist. Inside was a stack of envelopes, each one labeled in Vanessa's handwriting. If I leave, if he stays, if he dies, if he remembers, if they find me, each one sealed tight. I didn't know which one to open. I didn't know which he she meant, me, Harlan, someone else. But the last envelope, the one labeled if they find me, had something sticking out of it, just slightly, like it had been opened and resealed in a hurry. Against every instinct, I opened it. There was a letter, 1 page, written in rushed, panic strokes. Lyle, if this is in your hands, then I am either dead or about to disappear for the last time. I know you never knew the full story, You weren't supposed to. You were never supposed to be part of this. But they made me do things I didn't want to do. Harlan wasn't who you thought he was. Neither was I. There are files. Real files. On you. Dated before we met. Dated before I even moved to Oregon. I found them. I wasn't supposed to. They were watching you long before I ever came near you. I thought I was just a distraction. I thought they were just using me to keep you occupied. But now I think they needed something inside you. Or maybe something you forgot. They call it a sleeper memory. You used to talk in your sleep. Did you know that? You said things no one should have known. They recorded it. I'm sorry. I loved you. But that was the only part that wasn't a lie. Everything else. I was assigned to you, Lyle. I was assigned. I dropped the letter. I had to sit down. Assigned? To me? My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. I tried to remember anything, from before I met Vanessa that would justify this level of insanity. I lived a normal life. I had normal jobs. Grew up in a normal neighborhood. No military background. No government work. No secrets. Except for one. Something I hadn't thought about in over 20 years. A car crash. I was 17. I was the only survivor. My parents and my brother, all killed instantly. I walked away with a concussion and 3 cracked ribs. The doctors said it was a miracle, but the thing I never told anyone was what I saw right before the impact. I saw her, not Vanessa, someone else. A woman standing in the middle of the road, staring straight at me, with eyes like obsidian. She never moved, never flinched, just watched as the car spun out of control and flipped 3 times into the ravine. I never told a soul, but now, I wondered if I had said something in my sleep, back then. Something they heard. Something they were trying to extract, even now. And if Vanessa had been assigned to me, then who, or what, was I? It happened just before dawn, the hour when the world is half asleep and the silence feels personal. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the floorboard I'd torn up the night before. Vanessa's letters still scattered across the counter like evidence in a trial no one would ever see. I hadn't slept, eaten, or even stood up in over 5 hours. My body felt like it had abandoned me. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My skin felt too tight. And worst of all, the memory of that crash, the one I'd buried so deep it had turned into fiction, it was real. The woman in the road. The black eyes. The calmness. And maybe, just maybe, that was the exact moment my life had been hijacked. There was a knock at the door. Not loud. Just a polite, almost apologetic tap. 3 soft knocks. Then silence. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The second knock came. Louder this time. More certain. I grabbed the bat from behind the fridge and crept toward the peephole. He was standing there, a tall man in a gray wool coat. No hat, no expression. Bald. Pale skin. Black gloves. He looked like someone who might have wandered out of a courtroom and into a cemetery and gotten lost between the two. I didn't recognize him. But somehow, I knew he was here for me. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called out through it. My voice cracked. What do you want? His reply was instant, calm, and far too familiar. To finish what she couldn't. I almost dropped the bat. I looked through the peephole again. He hadn't moved. Not an inch. His eyes didn't blink. Not even once. His hands were folded in front of him, like he was waiting for communion. She's gone, I said. Vanessa's gone. She always was. He answered, like that meant something obvious. I was about to call the police when he slid something under the door, a photograph. Just one. But when I picked it up, the breath left my lungs. It was me. Again. Except I wasn't alone. I was in a hospital bed. My head was shaved. Tubes running from my neck. Machines surrounding me. But what turned my spine to ice was the date scribbled on the back of the photo. March 18th, 1999. That was the day after the car crash. The crash that supposedly left me with a concussion and 3 cracked ribs. I was never hospitalized. That's what I believed. That's what everyone told me. But here was a photo that said otherwise, and the man outside my door knew it. Let me in, Lyle, he said softly, like we were old friends meeting after a misunderstanding. You've asked all the right questions. Now you deserve a few answers. I didn't want to, but some part of me had already decided I needed to hear what he had to say. I undid the locks, one by one. My hand trembled as I turned the knob. When I opened the door, he stepped inside like he owned the place. He didn't look around. Didn't ask to sit. He just stood there and looked at me like I was a math problem he already solved. You were the only subject that survived long enough to forget, he said. What does that mean? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Exactly what it sounds like, he replied. You were part of a test. One they shut down, violently, when the data got too real. They wiped you. Or they tried. But something got left behind. Something you said. Something you saw. The woman. I said. In the road? He smiled for the first time. A cold, tragic smile. That wasn't a woman, Lyle. That was the key. And you looked directly at her. That was the moment everything changed. I stepped back. Why me? Because your mind didn't break, he said. It should have. Statistically, it was guaranteed. But instead, you locked it away. You built a new story, a new identity, a new life. We monitored it. Vanessa was sent in to keep you docile. But she fell out of protocol. She started asking her own questions. She got close. Too close. That's when Harlan got involved. I felt dizzy. My knees buckled, and I sat down without realizing it. Harlan was part of this. Everyone was part of this. You were the center. The anomaly. The glitch in a controlled environment that we thought we had perfected. I stared at him. What do you want now? His face hardened. To extract what's left. He took a step toward me. I raised the bat. He didn't flinch. You can fight, Lyle. You always could. But it's already begun. The memories are unraveling. You're remembering too much. And if you think this ends with me, you haven't been listening. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the moment. Glass breaking in the back room. The sound of someone else entering the house. The man in the coat turned, his expression finally changing. Not fear. Surprise. She found you first, he said under his breath. Then he bolted, out the front door, disappearing into the dark like a phantom pulled backward by time itself. And I stood frozen. Because in the hallway, standing there with blood on her hands and eyes full of terror, was Vanessa, alive. She was thinner. Her hair was shorter, streaked with silver at the roots, and her voice had a subtle tremble I'd never heard before, not even during the worst nights of our old life. But it was her. It was Vanessa, breathing, alive, and standing in my hallway with a look that said she had either killed someone to get here or was about to. I didn't ask her how she got in. I didn't ask where she'd been. I didn't ask why there was blood drying on her sleeves. I just let her inside, closed the door behind us, and locked it. Again, she collapsed into a chair like someone who had been sprinting for years and finally outran the storm. You saw him, she whispered. I nodded. He told you. Not everything, I said. Not what you knew. Not what we were. Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. I couldn't go through with it, Lyle. Back then, when they told me to keep you close, monitor your triggers, isolate you from questions, I said yes, because I thought I was helping stop something worse. But you fell in love, I said, and even though it sounded cliché, it wasn't. Not in that room. Not after all these years. It was truth finally being spoken. She looked away. I thought I could protect you by walking away. But it didn't work. They kept watching you anyway. That man who came tonight. He's not the last one. He's just the mouthpiece. The real ones never show their faces. They don't need to. They don't even know if they're human anymore. I sat beside her, handed her a glass of water, and watched her hands shake as she drank. So what now? I asked. They're still out there. Watching. Waiting for me to remember something I don't even understand. Vanessa reached into her jacket and pulled out a small black pouch, soft leather, with a drawstring. She opened it and poured a silver key into my hand. Cold. Heavy. Old. This unlocks a storage unit, she said. Off-grid. Not registered in your name or mine. Inside is everything I copied before I disappeared. Notes. Footage. Paper trails. Names. Proof. If we release it, the people behind this won't be able to hide anymore. I stared at the key. It felt like the weight of the last 15 years had finally been forged into something I could hold. Will they come for us? I asked. They already have, she said softly. But now we stop running. I stood up. For the first time in what felt like decades, my feet felt steady. My hands no longer trembled. The fog in my mind, the one I hadn't realized I'd been living inside for years, began to clear. We drove out together the next morning. No more paranoia. No more hiding. Just her and me in a beat-up Jeep we picked up off a cash sale, windows down, wind in our hair. Somewhere between here and the mountains, I laughed for the first time in 15 years. Not because it was over, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. We reached the storage unit by sunset. I used the key. The steel door lifted slowly, groaning against time and dust. Inside was everything. Photos, documents, tapes, a mirror I didn't recognize, and a small box labeled simply, "Before." I didn't open it that night. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I realized the truth didn't have to be a weapon. It could be a tool, a way forward. Vanessa stood beside me in the orange glow of the setting sun, her hand brushing mine. Not quite holding it yet, but there, solid, real. "I didn't save you," she said, almost ashamed. "I know," I replied, turning to face her. "You didn't have to. You gave me the choice to save myself." And I did. We both did. That night, under a sky that didn't feel like it was watching anymore, we slept without fear. And for once, in a world built on shadows, we woke up free.